two things essentially. I'm going to be looking at why we think homes are good, and then I'm going to be looking at the wider effect on communities that this excellent proposition has. Before I do that, I'm going to have a slight bit of rebuttal about what James just gave you, and I'm going to be looking at the ridiculous points of inflation and subprime mortgages, because they don't actually fit into the sensible part of this debate, because they're just wrong. Okay. What did he give us? He gave us a complete mischaracterization of what Dan told us first. He said, look, we're about people buying second homes. No! We think the problem is people buying second homes and other people not being able to afford them. What Dan told you is when people buy second homes in communities, it stops people in those communities being able to get onto the property ladder. That's a harm. He told us about mining communities in the north of England, which, you know, I thought was quite amusing, given where I'm from and what my family does. We'd say, ultimately, what we saw in the north of England was precisely this. When Thatcher brought in the right to buy homes, people bought those homes, they were invested in that community, they were able to improve their own homes, improve the value of that home, and move up in society. That was only a good thing. No, thank you. What does he then tell us? The rich are good at using capital. We think the rich are good at using capital for themselves. He didn't tell us why they would be good at affecting it for the worst affected people that Shengwu talked about. He said, no one's going to buy these homes. We say, why not? The reason that no one was able to buy these homes is because no one in your community could afford it. Now everybody on that income level is able to afford these homes. You actually increase the number of people willing and able to buy housing. What did he then tell us? House prices fall sometimes. Yes, they do, but they rise in the long term. Why? For two reasons. One, when you own your own home, you're able to improve the value of that home in a way you cannot do with council housing. But secondly, the wealth in society increases over the long term, so you're always able to make a better return. Maybe you don't make it in the first 5 years, but in 15 years' time, you do. We think if you have when he then told us, look, people are going to go into silly decisions. They're essentially not going to be able to afford these homes. What they're going to do is they're going to get the cash, and then they're going to go out and take ridiculous mortgages. We'd say that's not the case. One, we provide them with homes that they don't have to have any mortgage for. So we think that point falls. We think if you have a problem with the mortgage sort of system, regulate it more, as we're doing. But ultimately we think that these people aren't going to want to take out massive loans. We think they're actually going to want to, we think if they don't have a job, they aren't able to afford, no thank you, they aren't able to afford a large mortgage, they're simply going to take out the property which we provided to them for free. So that point falls. Okay, what did the end tell us? Look, private ownership is something which we shouldn't really prioritise. And we're going to say, well actually we should, that's going to be my first point. What were the two miscellaneous bits in here? We were told that inflation would increase and the boom bust cycle would increase. But as Dan told you quite correctly, this actually stops cycles by always providing some housing. But furthermore what it does is it stops the cycle, the lag time that occurs in the normal, regular housing market, whereby people build homes, the market crashes, and all of a sudden when those building projects come to fruition, you've massively increased the supply, and ultimately you can continue lowering the price. Will?
Is there more or less property speculation in a world where there is more private ownership?
Well, we think in the sense that more people are buying houses, but we don't think there's more sort of the wild property speculation that occurs when people are able to get their own home. And furthermore, what was the main problem with property speculation, Mr. Speaker? It was when we had people buying second homes. That was what often caused that property speculation. But this doesn't affect it. It only affects first home buying. So why are homes good? We say homes are good for people, and then they're good for communities. We say in terms of a private space, they actually represent something where you're able to express yourself, where you're able to have your most intimate moments, where you're able to have your family moments. You are able to control that space, you're able to do it, to decorate it in the way you like, you're able to express yourself with it in the way you like. We think that in itself is an important thing. Secondly, it roots you into somewhere for the long term. It provides you security and stability. It means that as a child you aren't being thrown about from housing project to housing project. It means when you can't afford the rent, you don't have to move from one school to the other. It provides you a stable base to live out your childhood. We think that's a good thing for those kids. We then think it actually gives you respect because we think ultimately we think that whether that's how likes it or not, having a house is something that is prioritised in the capitalist society. Having your home is something which people see as good because it just has such a long-term value. We give that to you and we improve your self-respect. But we also think it allows for self-improvement because it allows you to provide collateral for debts. But why? No, thank you. Because homes are something which tend not to decrease in value in the long term in the same way that, say, a car does. Homes are the one thing which actually keep their value over the long run. So people are willing, so banks are to give loans, or willing and able to give loans to you based upon the collateral if you are able to earn. Like, we recognise some of these people aren't able to earn, fair enough. I think there are a lot of people on the house who can't get on the housing ladder who do actually earn money, guys. We think they're able to improve their own lives by taking loans out on this collateral. No thanks. But what about communities? Because we say ultimately this improves those too. We think ultimately, one, it allows you to create a stake in a community. We think it means that because you are rooted there, because you are fixed there, because you know that you'll be able to stay there for a long time, you know that you won't be thrown out by the landlord. We think that means that you invest in it, you care more about it. We think it also means that you care about your individual home. It means that, for example, you care more about the simple things, broken windows, the way that your street looks. All of those things, when you actually have some financial investment in that property, means that you care about how that community works. Because you know you're going to be there for a long time. When you just rent, you may well not be there for the long run. So you don't invest as much. But furthermore, it helps rural communities in particular. Because what we've seen is precisely the problem we've had, where people in those communities aren't able to get on the property ladder, but other people who already have homes, who've already benefited from the capitalist system, are then able to use those homes to buy further homes. A massive harm, because people within those communities ultimately aren't able to get the provision of services that they need. You decimate those services. So, for example, you no longer have schools, you no longer have GP services within those places. It ultimately means that those communities fall apart, and it means that you then have to go somewhere else and start completely new communities, completely disrupting the lives of those people, disrupting them, whether they are adults, whether they are children. I think that's an incredibly harmful thing to do, to start ripping apart communities when other people are able to buy homes in your area, whack up the prices, and you no longer can afford it. We provide a method whereby you actually can afford to live in your community, can afford to have a stake in that community, and can afford to live together as human beings, and actually go on to do the things which we think are necessary to create a good society. You are able to get a job, you are able to self-actualise, if that's what you're bothered about, guys. Mr. Speaker, this benefits the poorest people in society. Because of base and self-respect, it allows them to improve themselves, and it improves the communities in which they live. We think that's only a good thing, and we beg to propose. Thank you.